Hello again. I wonder how long it is since viewers in Britain heard anybody on television or in their newspapers refer to immigrants. The word has fallen from favour with astonishing rapidity over the last 10 or 15 years until it has almost attained the same status as a racial slur. Talk of immigrants or illegal immigrants these days, and unless you're very fortunate with your audience, then people are going to look at you a little oddly. The accepted word these days for people entering this country to live here permanently is migrants. This is very odd because the two words are by no means synonymous. They have entirely different meanings. Those people crossing the English Channel in small boats, without troubling to abide by all those formalities which the rest of us tend to observe, intend to stay in this country for good. By the way, another 356 arrived on Sunday in this fashion. For some reason, though, every news channel and newspaper refers to them rather than as immigrants, as migrants. Let's just check up the meaning of the two words. Of course, it goes without saying that languages change and mutate over the years, and that words gradually acquire different meanings. This is a process, though, which takes place over the course of centuries rather than practically overnight. When St Paul's Cathedral was completed, one writer in 17th century London described it as awful, meaning not that he didn't think much of it, but rather that it filled him with awe. In the present case, though, we are talking about definitions which have been deliberately altered in the space of less than 20 years. Turning to my trusty Oxford Dictionary of English, we find that this edition was published in 2007, hardly long enough ago for the meanings of the words contained within it to have changed substantially. Let's see what the definition of immigrant is. Have patience, if you will. Nearly there. Immigrant, noun, a person who comes to live permanently in a foreign country. Well, that seems clear enough. Those 356 people who fetched up in small boats on Sunday are claiming asylum, so they certainly hope to live in this country permanently. They're immigrants. However, the newspapers call them migrants. What actually are migrants? Let's just have a quick check here, just to make sure that my memory isn't playing me false, as indeed happens sometimes after a certain age. Migrant, a person who moves from one place to another in order to find work. Well, unless you think that all those arriving in this country are just hoping to get work here for a while and then move on, then this really isn't the correct word to use for them, is it? You see what has happened here? The expression illegal immigrant is a very precise and accurate one for a certain class of person coming to Britain, and so it has been deliberately altered to try and conceal what is happening. The same process has been undertaken with the word immigrant. Those people crossing the Channel to come and live in this country on Sunday are immigrants, not migrants. This is far from being the only instance of our language being changed on purpose to fit in with a political ideology. Take the word foreigner. Let's see what the definition of foreigner is, shall we? While I've got the dictionary out, because this is also quite a curious point. Foreigner, a person born in or coming from a country other than one's own. It is therefore perfectly correct to say that the people living next door to me are foreigners, despite the fact that they have now been granted British citizenship. Getting a new passport doesn't change the fact that they were born in another country. They're still foreigners. I'm using now the dictionary definition, which was less than 20 years old. Forget any ideas that you might have acquired from your newspapers or from listening to television or looking at The Guardian and so on. People, even if they have been granted British passports, are still foreigners if they were born in another country. It is for reasons of immigration that this word is now also fast becoming relegated, like the word immigrant, as something pejorative. After all, in an ideal global community, there are no such things as foreigners, are there? We are all citizens of the world these days. We saw how useful this particular distortion and misuse of language was when the incident in Dublin occurred recently. It enabled a spokesman in the aftermath of the stabbing spree to say with a straight face that there were untrue rumours floating around that the person who had carried out the attack was a foreigner. Quite untrue. He was an Irish citizen. Of course, we all know that he was a foreigner, in that he had been born in a country other than Ireland. It was quite correct to describe him as being a foreigner. But because of the effort to change the meaning of ordinary words in the English language, it became possible for the authorities to deny this. Language is important. I'm sometimes accused of pedantry, and those that make that accusation or level it against me may have a point. But unless we all agree on the meanings of words and know what we are talking about, then no real debate is possible. This may, for all I know to the contrary, be the aim of tinkering around with the meanings of words in this way, and then getting journalists to use words in a new and improved way. It will perhaps be recalled that on a number of occasions on this channel, when I've been accused of being a racist, I have tried to find out what people understand by the word before engaging with them. This is, of course, hopeless, because most of the time such individuals don't know themselves what they mean by it. This is exactly the same as trying to replace the word immigrant with migrant and to pretend that foreigner has a different meaning from that which we find in the dictionary. It renders all sensible and rational discourse quite impossible, because two people will end up trying to have a debate but using the same words to mean completely different things. Any attempt to find out what somebody means by a certain word is dismissed as pedantry, and a statement will typically be made such as, "I know what I mean by racism." This means, of course, ultimately that people are not even able to think clearly about some topical matter, much less discuss it in a reasonable fashion. Words matter, language matters. The current trend, I think of to myself as the Humpty Dumpty use of language. I'm sure that readers will be familiar with Through the Looking Glass, the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, which is where Humpty Dumpty expounds his own particular view of the use of language. "When I use a word," Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, "it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less." This attitude brings about confusion and muddle at the very least, but I see it as something more sinister. I see it as a corruption of language being undertaken in order to achieve or advance a political point of view, which I think is a good deal worse than simply being muddled